If somebody were to ask you to name a boring fruit, you'd probably say an apple. Apples are such a common thing. People don't really think that much about apples. However, there are so many different varieties. There's hundreds and hundreds of varieties of apples out there in the world, and some of them are very different than ones that you would get at a supermarket. So in today's episode, I'm going to look at 4 different varieties that I was able to find. 4 that I don't believe I've had before, and we'll see if there's anything interesting about them. This might date the episode a bit, but right now there's a pandemic going on. Can't really travel that much, so finding varieties of fruit is a little bit difficult. However, there is one farmer's market that is open right now, and there is an apple vendor, Maynard Farms. So thank you to Maynard Farms for providing me these apples during such a difficult time. I'm going to read off some information that the farm provided for these apples. This is the Cameo. It was made in 1987 in Washington. This was a chance seedling found in an orchard of Red Delicious. Crunchy, sweet, and tart with buttery, nutty notes. There are hints of pear. Great eating apple, excellent in oatmeal. Okay, so that's one. And one note about this one, it's friggin' huge. This is like a really, really big apple. It's probably the biggest apples I've ever seen. There's a great texture to it. Really crunchy, really crisp, really juicy. The flavor on it is similar to a Red Delicious. Tastes like an apple, but a nice fresh apple with an incredible texture. It's got a nice sweetness to it. Maybe like on par with your average apple. It's like maybe like a 5, 4 or 5. And it's got a little bit of a tartness to it. Like a 2 out of 10 on tartness. Really nice. Next we have this one here. This is the Wine Crisp apple. Very dark in color. It looks really nice. It reminds me a little bit of the Wine Sap apple that I had in a prior episode. So I picked this one up because of the word wine in it and because of the coloring. I'm hoping that it tastes as good as the Wine Sap. In the 1990s, this was developed by Rutgers, Purdue, and Illinois. It's a cross between a Cox Orange Pippin, a Rome Beauty, and a Jonathan, among others. It is crisp and crunchy, sweet with a little tartness. A bit more dry. Not as crunchy, but it does have a nice, the texture is fine, it's not mealy or anything. Sweet, like a 5 out of 10. Not tart. Maybe a 1 out of 10 for tartness. There are some like little nuanced flavors in there, but because it's such a mild taste, it's a little hard to pick it up. I feel like there might be like a hint of a berry flavor in there, but it's not very strong. So it's good, but I'd say that's probably a better apple to do some cooking with rather than eating out of hand. It tastes fine, but it's a mild taste. Next we have the Blondie, which is a yellow apple, as you can see here. This one was created in 1998 in Ohio. Discovered in an orchard of Gala apples. It's juicy, floral, and sweet with almost no acidity, like a pear. Nice and juicy, nice and crisp. The description that the store gave for the Blondie was that this is kind of like a pear. It is a little bit, but like an Asian pear, like the Ya pear or a Korean pear or something. It's a very mild flavor. So if it's like a pear, it's like a mild pear. But I'd say more than that, in flavor at least, not really in texture, it has a flavor kind of like quince. It's got like a little bit of like a flower flavor to it, like a little bit of like rose water. So think like mild ya pear with a touch of rose water. It's got a little touch of honey as well. The sweetness on this is a little bit more than the other two. I'd put this at a 6. And the tartness, less. It's like a 0 or a 1. Very low tartness. Really nice though. It's very unique, that's for sure. It's definitely the most unique out of the 3. This is the Ida Red. It's from 1935 in Moscow. It's Idaho developed from a mix of antique apples. It's so red and round it could be out of a fairy tale. Bright white flesh that turns a heavenly pink when cooked. It's good. Tastes like an apple. It's a pretty standard apple taste. There's nothing really unique with this one. Sweetness on this, also like a 5. It's a little bit more tart. Tartness is maybe like a 2. Texture is nice. It's a bit softer than the other ones, but without being mealy. It's a nice tasting apple, but it tastes like one that you would get at a supermarket. It's not bad. It's not like flavorless or mealy apple. It's like a good apple, but probably the most common in flavor compared to the rest of these. I'd say my favorite apple out of all of these is probably the Blondie. It doesn't have like a huge taste to it, but the taste that it has is very unique. It's got a nice honey floral flavor in there. And it's also like a nice size. You know, you can eat one of these without feeling like super full or anything, which is nice. Next, I would go with the Cameo. This is more of like your standard apple in flavor, but the texture on it is great. It's a nice, strong texture. And if you want a big apple, that's a big apple. It's kind of unique just for that, for the size. Next, I'd go with the Wine Crisp. It's a little underwhelming, like the flavor in there is not super strong, but it is pretty unique. So I would give that the 3rd place. I like the coloring on it, it's pretty nice. And then finally I'd go with the Ida Red. It's totally fine, but it's like what you would get from a supermarket. Which sometimes that's what you want, in which case that is fine. For me, I tend to like things that have a little bit of like a unique character to it, so for that, I'm gonna put that in last place. But all of them totally good, and yeah, I think that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I want to give a special shout out to AltPod and Smarter Every Day. They are mega patrons over on Patreon.com. Patreon is how this channel happens. It's how I can afford to do all the things that I do. So if you want to help me out by supporting the channel and getting some bonuses along the way, check out the description. I also have these shirts for sale. Those are in the description as well. See you next time. Bye.